Good evening, everyone. I had my 2 minutes of fame in the beginning of the film. I don't know, there wasn't much of my house in the film, but tonight's kind of special for me because I've been working on my house for 2.5 years almost, and 3 years before that I spent obsessing about it and trying to design it and figure out how I was going to build, since I'd never built anything before. And Kent Griswold here, to my right, is the fellow who has the Tiny House blog, and his blog was incredibly inspirational to me, as well as probably gazillions of other people who have tiny houses. And like you saw Chris in the film do, I spent a lot of time on YouTube and the Tiny House blog trying to figure out the best way to design a tiny house and how to build one. Chris and Merritt came up to my house over a year ago, the night before my birthday, and they pitched their tent on my half-finished deck. And in the morning, the day of my birthday, we woke up and there were 6 wild pigs in our yard, so it was a lot of fun. So they couldn't make it tonight, and they asked us to answer any questions. If anyone has any questions? Yes?
I was curious about how you decided, I noticed, because I know Phil, that you use lots of different types of camera actually when you were filming this, and I could see different things. So was this film really thought out ahead of time? You had beautiful scenery, or was it just something that someone started filming and you guys said, oh, we should do this?
We're actually not the filmmakers. I'm in the film now.
You were part of the film.
Well, actually, I was just interviewed for it, but I know when they did it, they had a couple different cameras. But as far as all the technical parts of it, I really don't know. So, sorry, I can't answer that. Yes?
I'm just wondering, what's the percentage of people who build their own versus you try to just go buy one?
I'd say it's more of a majority who are the do-it-yourself builders. There are several companies now who are building them, but it's really a do-it-yourself market to a certain degree. Tumbleweed Tiny House is actually located over in Sonoma, are in the process of setting up. They have several builders across the country, and you can order homes through them, and there's other custom builders who will build for you. Yes?
I was just wondering how creative you had to get with material. Like, were you always trying to find stuff on Craigslist or stuff in the junkyard to try to save money or give you inspiration? Can you describe that process at all?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I actually was terrified by this project because it's so huge. It's the biggest project. I have a history of being pretty creative, and but I'd say this project made me feel a bit victimized by my own creative impulses because it's still going and it's been 5 years. But today is my official cutoff date, and my friends who are here tonight will laugh at me because I've been saying that for at least 6 months. But today, I swear, it's the last day. But yes, so I bought the French doors at a Restore for $100. I bought the bay window, the baby bay window, at another Restore. I think 5 different Restores in 2 different states. Craigslist, I got leftover hardwood floor from somebody's house. So I collected a bunch of stuff before I ever started building, which made me feel insane, certifiable, because I was spending money when I was unemployed on pieces of a house that didn't exist yet. And I'd say the reason I did this project was because, like I said in the film, I was sick and tired of renting crappy apartments for way too much money. But also because I have a history of wanting to do the ecologically correct thing and live lightly on the land, and been interested in permaculture and straw bale, and I couldn't do any of those things because I don't own land. So as soon as I saw somebody building one of these things, and I believe it might have been Jay Schaefer, or I might have run into Kent's blog and seen tiny houses, I knew immediately that's what I was going to do. It was kind of like love at first sight. But it was very overwhelming because it sort of hit me like a truck. And I thought, wow, that's really big. Am I going to be able to pull that off? And it's, you know, we've been living in it for 2.5 years as we build it, which I don't recommend to anyone. And it would would be certainly helpful if you had enough money when you started, which is also rather difficult, and maybe a job, which I've had now, and I've been building on the weekends, which is another reason it's taken so long. So, yes?
Given the restrictions in various areas, is it better to build it mobile as opposed to stationary on a plot of land? What's the best way to build this?
Well, if you own your own land and you're maybe in Sonoma or somewhere where they're friendly to alternative living, then you just check into the rules. The real reason of building on wheels, if you don't own land, is because then it's mobile, and if you have to leave, you can go and take it with you. So I really wanted to build a cob house, which I thought would be the coolest thing ever, to build sort of a clay sculpture and get to move into it. I love cob. But it would make me very sad I'm 51. So if I put all that energy into building a house and had to leave, I would be very sad to leave it behind. So this is the culmination of my decades of searching for quality of life. And I think I finally found it. I'm on 40 acres. The deer, the wild turkeys, the rabbits, and raccoons, which frankly don't make me very happy, walk through my yard, and I have a great view, and it's just, I paid the least rent I've ever paid, and I live in the most beautiful place I've ever lived in. And I live inside of something that I built with my own hands, and it's honestly the most rewarding thing I've ever done. And I feel like I've contributed to making the world a better place simply by not, living in a way that I used to live, which felt heavy on the land, It's bad enough that, I'm part of a species that's building a continent of plastic in the Pacific Ocean, but I just want to get away from contributing to that as much as possible. So, any other questions?
It just seems like, to me, they're very much prettier, but they're a camper trailer.
Yes.
And that's the obvious thing that nobody will say. So
No, I've heard it. I'm glorified trailer trash.
Yeah.
I'm very,
Well, no, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying,
That's okay.
you people
I own it.
money invested in a house, there would be an alternative that would be very
Yes.
paying.
It's much cheaper to live in a trailer. And when I went to college, I went to college in Arizona, and I lived in a Airstream, which was a 35-foot monster that I bought used for $3,000, and it allowed me to go to college without having huge debt. And I loved it. Airstreams are kind of cool and pretty, but inside I would sit there thinking, this thing is huge, but there's no storage. There's like almost no closets. My tiny house is 22 feet long and has 5 closets that are large. Not that I have a lot of stuff, but there's 2 of us, and a cat, which takes up a lot of room.
One thing about the difference between a tiny house and an RV or a trailer is a tiny house is built like a normal house, has good insulation, is sturdy. Most RVs are like 1 inch thick and have about that much insulation. They're meant to be lived in part-time, where a tiny house is usually designed to last as many years as a full-size house.
I almost froze in my Airstream. I went out and bought a sheepskin. I'm a vegetarian. I was so cold, I thought I need something like a sheep to keep me warm. Because, there's this thick, and now my tiny house has sheep wool in the insulation. And it's very, very warm, and it takes almost no heat to keep the thing warm. It's the lowest setting of the little electric heater, and it's warm all night, so it's great, cozy. Anybody else?
I was curious, is this happening around the world, or is this just an American phenomenon?
It's very heavy in North America, but there is a lot of interest in Australia, Great Britain, and parts of Western Europe, especially. We hear from a lot of people in those areas. In Europe, many people live tiny anyway. If you've ever traveled over there, you have wet baths that are literally your shower and toilet all in one area. The kitchens are very tiny by American standards, and so a lot of people live that way anyway, and it's just considered normal. And here in America, we've always had the big land, always thought bigger is better, and I think it's more of a new idea to North Americans than maybe the rest of the world. Anyone else? No, it's late, we don't want to keep you too
Anybody
long.
here who has a tiny house? No, can't be the one.
Sorry, home-based business, I need a space.
Yeah.
Anybody here who wants a tiny house?
Somewhere else.
Yay! It's the best thing you'll ever do for yourself, I promise you. And like Chris in the film, there's days when you're gonna cry. I've broken down in tears in the middle of Home Depot because I just couldn't figure anything out. Yeah, there's many days I thought I was gonna have a nervous breakdown, and I learned how to cuss really well. In fact, I made up cuss words. Yeah. Oh.
Sorry.
I'm not gonna tell you what they were.
So do you like produce less waste living in a small house?
Well, yeah, we have a compost toilet, so 2 of them actually, one for number 1 and one for number 2. And all the water, goes to the plants. It doesn't go into a sewage system that gets treated by huge chemicals. We live on land with a well, so our water doesn't have chlorine and fluoride and other crap in it. Probably has other stuff in it that's probably not so good for you, but it's a trade-off. So yes, a lot less. And then because you're living in less space, there's less cleaning supplies, there's less, heating bills, we almost use no electricity. We have a computer and a toaster oven and a couple of light bulbs and our little heater. That's about it. So, yeah. Yes?
It's kind of a mundane question, but insurance, do you get insurance on these?
That's a really good question.
Also, I was going to ask a question about the water, but for someone who doesn't have access to
Yeah, this was also an experiment in seeing if somebody who's working class could figure out how to be green, because it's kind of a luxury in many ways, and it can be done, obviously. But you're asking that question about insurance to somebody who didn't have car insurance for a couple of decades. Don't tell anyone. I do now, of course. But I sort of had to rely on higher insurance because I was very poor for many years. But there's no real way of insuring these unless you have some kind of groovy insurance company that'll let you claim it as an RV. And I don't know. Do you know more about that?
It is a real issue, and people are trying to figure out. They're doing a lot of self-insured. They're working on some co-ops to get that worked out. Yes, about a year ago there was one that burnt down that was just about finished, and they basically did crowdfunding on the internet to help rebuild again, and that was her insurance plan. But through that, several people are working to pull together a co-op type insurance at this time. But a lot of times, well, if the tiny house is RV certified, which a lot of the builders are starting to do now, you can get regular RV insurance for them. So it might be worth paying somebody to build your house versus do it yourself for that reason.
On that note, I just want to say that there's one thing for many of you who raised your hands who are interested in doing this. Please do not go buy an RV and tear it up and use that trailer to build your 2x4 framed house on, because 2x4 framing is very heavy. So we spent a lot of money on the trailer, and even that, we had it custom built for this, and even that we had a problem because we built it in Vegas in a warehouse and then pulled it here. And 2 miles short of our destination here, a wheel came flying off and almost killed me and a couple of other people. So don't skimp on the foundation of your house, which is the trailer. Buy a really hefty trailer.
Given the fact that our whole culture is built on the concept that bigger is better, and the more money you make, the larger you have to live, even if you have the desire to live in a tiny house, how difficult is it psychologically to kind of conform to that space?
That's a good question. I actually sort of mentally mapped where we spent time in the last 3 apartments that we lived in. They were small apartments anyways, but I sort of mapped in my mind the time spent at each place, and basically it was the desk at the computer, the kitchen, because I cook a lot, so I knew a kitchen had to be good, and the bedroom was a really huge waste of space because it was just the bed where you sleep. So I realized that we could cut out a lot of space by doing, we would be able to fit and function in a small house. And I doubled the space, luckily, because we had a party, our very first party, our housewarming party today, and 11 people fit. It was sort of like a clown car you can live in. And because I built a deck that's 8 feet by 16 feet, it sort of doubles the space, and it's sort of a big open area, and that's sort of it's the living room, but it's, I bought windows from the dump and screen, so it's kind of enclosed, but it was a little chilly, but it wasn't too bad.
Do you have a loft bed?
Yes,
Do you not hit your head?
I made it really tall, so you can stand up in it like this, and
So if you wake up from a nightmare, you're not gonna have a problem?
no, you can actually sit up in bed and not hit your head on the, I've lived in apartments with lofts that you couldn't sit up in the bed.
My sister had one of those, that's why I asked.
Yeah, no, this is,
Tiny, tiny
our loft is a round, has a round roof, which is a little different than the ones you saw. If you want to see our house, you can look at it at catstinyhome.wordpress.com. Whatever it is, I don't know. You'll find us. Healdsburg.
Go to tinyhouseblog.com today. I printed an article of hers, and there's a link to her site, and there's several more stories on the blog about it, but very well-designed home and lots of space. I was very impressed.
Check it out.
Thank you so much.
Thank